Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the center of the Great Hall on Nexus Prime. The building was huge, bigger than any stadium on Earth. Around him sat creatures from across the galaxy. Some had 6 arms, others had scales that shimmered like diamonds. A few floated in the air inside glass bubbles filled with strange gas. Jake wore his best uniform, the blue one with all his medals. Next to him stood Commander Lisa Harper, Earth's top diplomat. She had practiced her speech 100 times, but now her hands shook as she held the papers. The Galactic Council had agreed to hear Earth's request. Humanity wanted to join the Galactic Defense Alliance. They wanted to help protect the galaxy from pirates and raiders. Jake thought it would be simple. Earth had good ships and brave soldiers. What could go wrong? Everything, it turned out. The first alien to speak was tall and thin, with skin like purple glass. This was Ambassador Zephyr from the Zephyrian Empire. His voice sounded like wind. Through broken glass, "Honored Council," he said, "we have reviewed the human request. Their ships are made of metal and plastic. They use chemical rockets and nuclear reactors. This is technology we abandoned 1,000,000 years ago." Laughter filled the hall. It came from 100 different throats, making sounds Jake had never heard before. Some clicked, some buzzed, some made noises like breaking glass. But it was all laughter, and it was all aimed at Earth. The insectoid Queen Stakara spoke next. Her voice came from holes in her chest, not her mouth. Human ships have no bio-neural networks. They cannot think or feel. How can warriors fight alongside dead metal? More laughter. Jake's face grew red. He wanted to speak, but Lisa grabbed his arm. "Not yet," she whispered. Admiral Vexthal of the Hegemony Fleet stood up. He was 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin like black stone. His species had ruled space for 3,000 years. Everyone in the hall went quiet when he spoke. "Humans build ships from dirt and dead plants," he said. His voice was deep and cold. "They call it steel and wood composite. We call it garbage. Their weapons shoot pieces of metal. Their armor is layers of different materials welded together. This is not how real warriors fight." He pointed at Jake with one of his 4 arms. "A proper warship is grown from living crystal or forged from matter taken from the hearts of stars. It should sing with the voice of its pilot. It should heal its own wounds and think its own thoughts. These human toys are an insult to warfare itself." The hall erupted in agreement. Creatures roared, buzzed, and clicked their approval. Jake felt his heart sink. This was not going as planned. The Crystalline Collective spoke next. They were beings made of living rock that could change shape at will. Their representative formed into a rough copy of a human ship, then crumbled apart while making sounds. Like breaking glass, the message was clear. "Human vessels lack elegance," the collective said. "They are crude boxes with crude weapons. They cannot phase through dimensions or bend space around themselves. They are trapped in normal space like insects in amber." Captain Ben Turner watched from the viewing gallery above. He was Jake's best ship commander, and he had seen real combat. His hands formed fists as he listened to the insults. These aliens had never fought pirates in the Outer Rim. They had never lost friends to raiders. They sat in their perfect ships and looked down on everyone else. The formal vote came quickly. The Council rejected Earth's application by a margin of 847 to 3. Only 3 species voted in favor. And they were small colonies that barely had any ships of their own. The Council's final statement was read by a floating orb that spoke in perfect English. "The Galactic Defense Alliance regrets that humanity's current military capabilities do not meet our standards. We suggest that Earth focus on agriculture and raw material export. Perhaps in a few centuries, when human technology has evolved, we might reconsider." The hall filled with laughter again. Some aliens were actually pointing at Jake and Lisa. Others made gestures that were clearly rude, even if Jake did not understand. "How long do you think before they give up?" asked Ambassador Zephyr. 50 years, replied another alien. Maybe less. They will realize they are not warriors. "I give them a century," said Admiral Vexthal. "Humans are stubborn, but they will learn their place eventually." The betting continued as the human delegation prepared to leave. Jake's face was stone, showing nothing. Lisa gathered her papers with shaking hands. They had prepared for months, and it was all for nothing. As they walked toward the exit, Captain Turner activated a small device hidden in his uniform. It was recording everything. Every insult, every laugh, every dismissive gesture. This would be sent to every human military base in the galaxy. "Admiral," Turner said quietly as they reached the door, "they have made a mistake." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "They think we are weak because we build our ships from Earth materials. They think we are primitive because we use simple technology. But they have never seen what humans can do when we are angry." The great doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. The laughter of the council continued, echoing through the halls of Nexus Prime. 3 days later, the recording reached Earth. Within hours, it was playing on every military base, every shipyard, every training facility. Soldiers, sailors, and pilots watched in silence as aliens mocked their service and their sacrifice. The response was immediate. Recruitment offices were flooded with volunteers. Shipyards that had been working one shift switched to 3. Research facilities that had been studying peaceful technology turned to weapons and armor. Jake Morrison returned to Earth a different man. The laughing faces of the aliens haunted his dreams. But more than that, he was filled with a cold, quiet anger. That would reshape the galaxy the aliens had laughed at. Earth, they had called human ships toys and human soldiers primitives. They had made their position clear. Humanity was not welcome among the stars. Jake stood in his office on Luna Station, looking out at the Earth below. The blue and white planet seemed small and fragile, but he knew better. Earth had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and countless wars. It had produced warriors who conquered continents and explorers who crossed oceans in wooden ships. Now, those same warriors would cross the void between stars in ships of steel and determination. The aliens wanted to see what humans could do when they were angry. They would get their chance. The galaxy had laughed at Earth. Soon, they would learn why that was a mistake. 2 years had passed since the humiliation at Nexus Prime. General Patricia Kane stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching screens that showed Earth's orbital shipyards. Day and night, sparks flew from welding torches. Giant cranes moved hull sections into place. The sound of construction never stopped. Patricia had gray hair and tired eyes, but her voice was steel. She commanded the largest military buildup in human history. Every nation on Earth had contributed money, resources, and people. The old divisions between countries meant nothing now. There was only Earth and the hostile galaxy beyond. "Status report," she said to her aide. 200 ships completed. "General, another 100 in final construction." "The new stealth systems are ready for testing," Patricia nodded. The aliens had laughed at human technology. They would learn the difference between primitive and practical. Dr. Richard Stone walked into the command center carrying a tablet full of data. He was the head of the Terran Research Division, a thin man with thick glasses who had spent his life studying alien warfare. Now his research would save humanity. "General," he said, "we have finished analyzing every major battle in Galactic history. The aliens always fight the same way. They rely on energy shields, long-range weapons, and superior technology. They never adapt their tactics. And that helps us how?" Patricia asked. "Because humans adapt. We learn from every defeat. We study every victory. While they perfected one way of fighting, we learned 1,000 ways." Richard pulled up a holographic display showing different alien ship designs. "Look at this. The Zephyrians always attack from above. The hegemony always forms battle lines. The Crystalline Collective always tries to surround the enemy. They are predictable." Patricia studied the display. "What about their weapons?" "Energy. Beams that cut through most armor. Particle weapons that disrupt electronics. Gravity manipulators that crush ships. All very advanced," Richard smiled. "All very specialized. They have never faced an enemy that refuses to fight by their rules." Meanwhile, Captain Helen Brooks was testing those new rules in the outer system. Her ship, the TDS Wolverine, hung in the darkness between Jupiter and Saturn. To any alien sensor, the area looked empty. But Helen knew better. "Run the test again," she told her crew, the Wolverine's experimental stealth system activated. The ship did not turn invisible like alien vessels. Instead, it became something else entirely. Heat dampeners made it as cold as the void. Electromagnetic baffles scrambled sensor readings. Special paint absorbed radar and light. Most importantly, the ship stopped looking like a ship. External panels shifted to match the background. The Wolverine became a piece of space debris, a chunk of ice, a wandering asteroid. Helen watched the test results with satisfaction. "Alien stealth is about hiding," she told her crew. "Human stealth is about lying." On Mars, Lieutenant Colonel Alex Hayes was teaching his Marines to fight in ways that would horrify civilized species. His soldiers trained in zero gravity, learning to move and shoot in 3 dimensions. They practiced boarding actions, cutting through ship hulls with simple tools. "Aliens fight with energy weapons and fancy armor," Alex told his troops. "We fight with bullets and determination. Their weapons are more advanced. Ours are more reliable." He showed them footage of alien soldiers. They moved slowly, protected by energy shields that could stop most attacks. Their weapons were devastating but required time to charge between shots. "They fight like knights in armor," Alex said. "We fight like pirates, fast, dirty, and mean." The human Marines carried kinetic weapons, guns that fired metal bullets at incredible speed. Simple technology, but it worked in any environment. No power cells to run out, no exotic materials to replace. Just gunpowder and lead, the same combination that had conquered Earth. Admiral Jake Morrison reviewed intelligence reports in his office. The news was not good. Human colonies on the frontier were under attack. The raids were too organized to be simple piracy. Someone was testing human defenses. "Show me the latest reports," he told his intelligence officer. The data appeared on his screen. 3 colonies hit in the past month. The attackers used advanced weapons and coordinated tactics. They specifically targeted human settlements, leaving alien outposts alone. "Someone is hunting us?" Morrison said. Double quotes. "Yes, sir. The attacks are definitely military, professional soldiers, not pirates." Morrison studied the star charts. The attacks formed a pattern, moving closer to Earth with each raid. Someone was probing human defenses, learning their capabilities. "Double the patrols, and send word to the fleet commanders. We may need to take the fight to them." The concept of Earthborn ships was taking shape in shipyards across the solar system. Unlike the sterile perfection of alien vessels, human ships were built like living things. They had redundant systems, modular components, and the ability to repair themselves using basic materials. Chief Engineer Nancy White explained the philosophy to her workers. "An alien ship is like a sword. Perfect, beautiful, but if it breaks, it is useless. Our ships are like Swiss Army knives. Not as pretty, but they can do anything." Human ships carried machine shops, 3D printers, and supplies of raw materials. If the main reactor failed, backup systems would take over. If the hull was breached, repair crews would patch it with whatever they could find. The ships were designed to survive, not to impress. The TDS Constitution was the first of the new generation. From the outside, it looked like a collection of boxes and cylinders welded together. Alien engineers would call it ugly. Human engineers called it practical. The Constitution had 7 different ways to generate power. Its weapon systems could fire anything from guided missiles to chunks of asteroid. The crew quarters were designed like submarine compartments, with blast doors and emergency supplies. "She is not pretty," said Captain Dave Miller, the Constitution's commander, "but she will take a beating and keep fighting." The ship's computer was different too. Instead of an artificial intelligence, it used human intuition backed by simple software. The crew could override any system, repair any component, and adapt to any situation. As the months passed, reports of alien raids increased. Human colonies were being hit harder and more frequently. The attacks were becoming bolder, striking. Closer to major shipping lanes, Morrison made his decision during a meeting with the other fleet commanders. We are not going to wait for them to come to us. The Earthborn fleet is ready for its first mission. The room fell silent. For 2 years, they had been building and preparing. Now it was time to test their ships and crews against real enemies. "Where do we hit them?" asked Captain Brooks. "The Kepler 442 system. Intelligence says there is a major raider base there. They have been using it to launch attacks on our mining operations." The fleet commanders studied the tactical display. Kepler 442 was deep in contested space, far from Earth. If something went wrong, they would be on their own. "How many ships?" asked Captain Miller. 6 vessels for the first strike. We need to test our capabilities before committing the main fleet." The meeting ended with quiet determination. The Earthborn fleet would have its first battle. The aliens, who had laughed at Earth, would learn that human ships might be made of dirt and dead plants. But they were crewed by warriors who never gave up. As the fleet prepared to depart, messages flooded in from across human space. Colonies that had been attacked sent their thanks. Families who had lost loved ones to raiders offered their prayers. Earth itself seemed to hold its breath. The dark ships of humanity were about to show the galaxy what they could do. The aliens had wanted to see human weakness. Instead, they would discover human strength. The sky was about to go dark with Earthborn ships, and the laughter of Nexus Prime would become a memory of regret. Captain Susan Miller stood on the bridge of the TDS Falcon, watching the stars of the Kepler 442 system grow brighter on the main screen. Behind her ship followed 5 others: the Ranger, the Wolverine, the Hawk, the Tiger, and the Bear, 6 human vessels against an unknown number of enemies. "Sensor contact," reported Lieutenant Gary Chun from his station. "Multiple ships in orbit around the 4th planet. Looks like a mining operation." Susan studied the display. The enemy ships were sleek and beautiful, their hulls gleaming like polished metal. They moved with grace, powered by energy systems that left no visible exhaust. Everything about them screamed advanced technology. "How many?" she asked. 12 vessels, Captain." "They are bigger than us and heavily armed." Susan nodded. The intelligence reports had been right. This was a major raider base, probably run by the hegemony as a training exercise. They were using human colonies as target practice. "Send the signal to all ships." "Attack pattern Delta. Time to show them what Earthborn ships can do." The human fleet moved forward in a loose formation, unlike the precise battle lines favored by alien forces. The human ships spread out in 3 dimensions. They looked random, chaotic, but there was method to their movement. The enemy spotted them quickly. The alien commander, a hegemony officer named Krelthax, laughed when he saw the approaching humans. 6 small ships against 12 larger ones. The humans were either very brave or very stupid. "Pitiful," he said to his crew. "Their ships look like metal boxes welded together." "This will be over quickly." The battle began with long-range fire. The alien ships opened up with energy weapons that could cut through most armor. Beams of pure light lanced across space, striking the human vessels with devastating power. The TDS Tiger took the first hit. The energy beam sliced through its forward section, causing explosions that lit up the darkness. On any other ship, that would have been the end. But the Tiger kept fighting. "Damage report," Captain Jerry Walsh called out on the Tiger's bridge. "Forward weapon systems down. Hull breach in sections 4 and 5. But the reactor is stable and engines are operational." Jerry smiled grimly. "Route power to the backup weapons. Seal those breaches. We are not done yet." The alien commander watched in confusion as the Tiger continued to fight. The ship should have been destroyed. Instead, it was firing back with weapons mounted on its sides and rear. The human vessel had redundant systems that the aliens had never seen before. Captain Miller ordered the fleet to close range. This was the key to human tactics. Get close enough that superior technology mattered less than determination and firepower. "All ships, execute Terran Maneuver 7. Close to knife-fighting distance." The human ships accelerated directly toward the enemy. This was not how civilized species fought. Proper warfare involves standing off at long range, using advanced weapons and energy shields. The humans were charging like barbarians. Commander Eric Davis on the TDS Ranger took a direct hit to his main reactor. The explosion should have destroyed his ship instantly. Instead, backup systems kicked in automatically. The Ranger's lights dimmed for a moment, then came back on as secondary power systems engaged. Reactor 1 is offline, his engineer reported. Switching to Reactor 2. We have lost main engines, but maneuvering thrusters are functional. Good enough, Eric said. Load the mining charges into the torpedo tubes. If we cannot use proper weapons, we will use whatever we have. The alien ships found themselves facing an enemy that refused to die cleanly. The human vessels absorbed damage that should have been fatal and kept fighting. When their main weapons were destroyed, they used backup systems. When those failed, they improvised. The TDS Wolverine lost its missile launchers early in the battle. Captain Helen Brooks did not retreat. Instead, she ordered her crew to fire the ship's emergency flares directly at an enemy vessel. The flares were not weapons, but they confused the alien sensors long enough for the Wolverine to get close. Ramming speed? Helen ordered. Her crew looked at her in shock. Captain, we will destroy ourselves. Not if we do it right. Our hull is designed to take impacts. Theirs is not. The Wolverine struck the alien ship at full speed. The impact crushed the enemy vessel's delicate hull, while the human ship's reinforced structure held together. Both ships were damaged, but only the Wolverine was still fighting. The tide of battle turned when the humans reached close range. The alien weapons were designed for long-distance fighting. At close range, the human ships could use their full arsenal of kinetic weapons, guns that fired metal bullets and explosive shells. The TDS Falcon engaged an enemy cruiser at point-blank range. Susan Miller watched as her ship's cannons tore through the alien vessel's beautiful hull. The enemy ship had powerful energy shields, but they were not designed to stop simple metal bullets fired at incredible speed. Target their reactor, Susan ordered. Pour everything we have into that ship. The Falcon's guns roared in the vacuum of space. Streams of bullets and explosive shells hammered the alien cruiser. The enemy ship's shields flickered and failed. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull. The alien commander, Krelthax, watched his fleet being destroyed by primitive technology. The humans were using simple weapons that his people had abandoned thousands of years ago. But those simple weapons were working. How is this possible? He demanded. Their technology is inferior. Their ships are crude. We should be winning. His tactical officer had no answer. The human ships were like nothing they had faced before. They took damage that should have killed them and kept fighting. When their weapons were destroyed, they used improvised replacements. When their hulls were breached, they repaired them with whatever materials they could find. The battle ended with the human fleet victorious. Of the 12 alien ships, 8 were destroyed and 4 had fled. The human losses were heavy, 3. Ships badly damaged, dozens of crew members killed or wounded. But they had one. Commander Davis sent a message to the fleeing enemy ships. His voice was calm and cold. You laughed at our ships made of dirt and dead plants. Now your friends feed the void between stars. Earth remembers every insult. The message was recorded and transmitted across the galaxy. Within hours, it reached alien military commands on dozens of worlds. The reaction was swift and angry. The Hegemony High Command dismissed the defeat as a fluke. Krelthax was stripped of his rank for losing to primitive humans. The official report claimed that the human victory was due to lucky circumstances and cowardly tactics, but some alien officers were not so sure. They studied the battle recordings with growing concern. The human ships had fought like nothing they had ever seen. They refused to follow the normal rules of warfare. They turned their weaknesses into strengths and their desperation into weapons on Earth. The news of victory was celebrated in every city. Humans had faced the galaxy's finest technology and won. The species that had been laughed at and dismissed had proven they could fight. Admiral Morrison read the battle reports with satisfaction. The first test of human tactics had been successful. The Earthborn fleet had shown that determination and adaptability could overcome superior technology, but he knew this was just the beginning. The aliens would not accept defeat so easily. They would come back with larger fleets and better weapons. The real test was still ahead. In the command centers of a dozen alien civilizations, military leaders gathered to discuss the human threat. The laughing had stopped. Now there was only cold anger and the promise of revenge. The galaxy had learned that humans could fight. Soon, they would learn how far humanity was willing to go to protect itself. The sky was about to go dark with Earthborn ships, and the real war was just beginning. Admiral Vexthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The massive ship was longer than most human cities and filled with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Around him, the combined fleet of 6 alien civilizations stretched across space like a metal constellation. 200 ships. The finest vessels from the Hegemony, the Zephyrian Empire, the Crystalline Collective, and 3 other major powers. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering, crewed by experienced warriors who had never known defeat. "Signal all fleet commanders," Vexthal ordered. "We will end this human problem once and for all." 6 months had passed since the embarrassing defeat at Kepler 442. The human victory had been dismissed as luck by most alien leaders, but Vexthal was not taking any chances. This time, he would bring overwhelming force. The alien fleet had gathered at the edge of the Sol system, just beyond the orbit of Pluto. Their message to Earth was simple and brutal: surrender unconditionally within 72 hours, or face total destruction. On Luna Station, Admiral Jake Morrison read the alien ultimatum with calm eyes. He had expected this moment since the day the Galactic Council had rejected humanity. Now the real test would begin. "Status of the fleet?" he asked his staff. 150 ships ready for combat, sir. All crews are at battle stations." Jake nodded. The human fleet was smaller than the alien armada, but it had advantages the enemy did not understand. For 6 months, Earth's shipyards had been preparing for exactly this battle. The TDS Constitution floated in the darkness near Jupiter, its hull painted black as space itself. Captain Dave Miller watched his sensors as the alien fleet moved deeper into the solar system. The enemies were confident, their ships glowing with running lights and energy signatures. "They are not even trying to hide," his tactical officer observed. "Why should they?" Dave replied. "They think we are primitives who will meet them in open battle. They have no idea what is coming." The first phase of the battle began as the alien fleet approached Mars. They expected to find the human fleet waiting for them in formation, ready for a traditional space battle. Instead, they found empty space. "Where are they?" demanded Commander Zefkar of the Zephyrian fleet. "Our sensors show no human ships in the inner system," his scanner operator reported. "They may have fled deeper into their own territory." The alien commanders were puzzled but not worried. If the humans wanted to make their last stand at Earth itself, that was fine. It would make the final bombardment easier, but the humans were not hiding near Earth. They were everywhere. Ships emerged from the asteroid belt, their hulls disguised as chunks of rock and metal. Others rose from the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, where they had been hiding for weeks. The human fleet had turned the entire solar system into a trap. Admiral Morrison gave the order from his command ship: "All units, execute Protocol Darksky." Across the solar system, every human ship activated its experimental stealth system simultaneously. The effect was unlike anything seen in galactic warfare. The human fleet simply vanished from all sensors. For the first time in recorded history, the void between planets went truly dark. The aliens found themselves alone in a system that had been full of enemies just moments before. "This is impossible," Vexthal said, staring at his blank sensor screens. "Ships cannot simply disappear." "Our sensors are being jammed," his science officer reported. "No, that is not right. The sensors are working, but there is nothing to detect." The human stealth technology was not like alien cloaking devices. It did not bend light or shift into other dimensions. Instead, it made the ships invisible by making them part of the background. Heat dampeners eliminated thermal signatures. Electromagnetic scramblers confused radar. Special hull coatings absorbed all forms of radiation. Most importantly, the human ships had stopped behaving like ships. They drifted like asteroids, rotated like debris, and moved in patterns that seemed random but were actually coordinated. The aliens were looking for warships, but the humans had become part of space itself. The first alien ship to die never saw its killer coming. The TDS Wolverine materialized from what looked like empty space, fired a full spread of missiles, and vanished again before the enemy could respond. The alien cruiser exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness. "Enemy contact bearing 27 Mark IV, an alien sensor operator called out. "No, contact lost." "Wait, new contact bearing. 1-8 Mark 9. The aliens spun their ships in circles, trying to track enemies that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Their sophisticated sensors, designed to detect energy signatures and gravitational distortions, were useless against ships that had become invisible. Captain Helen Brooks piloted the Wolverine through the battle like a dancer. Her ship appeared from behind an asteroid, destroyed an enemy vessel, and vanished into the darkness again. The aliens never knew where the next attack would come from. "Target the command ship," she told her crew. "Let's see how Admiral Vexthal likes fighting blind." The Eternal Dominion shuddered as human missiles struck its hull. The massive ship's energy shields absorbed most of the damage, but the psychological effect was devastating. The flagship of the hegemony fleet was under attack by invisible enemies. Dr. Richard Stone's research had paid off perfectly. The human ships used every trick he had developed, turning the environment of space into a weapon. They hid in asteroid fields, used gravitational anomalies to mask their approach, and struck from angles that should have been impossible. The TDS Ranger appeared directly above an alien battleship, having used Jupiter's gravity well to mask its approach. Commander Eric Davis watched as his ship's guns tore through the enemy vessel's upper hull. The aliens had not thought to armor their ships against attacks from above. "Gravity is free," Eric told his crew. "We just have to be smart enough to use it." The battle became a nightmare for the alien fleet. Ships exploded without warning. Commanders issued orders to fleets that could not see their targets. The disciplined formations of the galactic powers dissolved into chaos. The crystalline collective tried to use their ability to phase through dimensions, but the human ships were not where they expected. The Zephyrions attempted to use their speed advantage, but you cannot outrun an enemy you cannot see. Captain Susan Miller led a squadron of human ships in a coordinated attack on the alien rear guard. Her vessels approached from the direction of the sun, using the solar radiation to mask their heat signatures. The enemy ships were silhouetted against the stars, perfect targets for human gunners. "Fire everything," Susan ordered. "Make them pay for every insult, every laugh, every dismissive word." The human fleet fought with a fury that surprised even their own commanders. Years of mockery and humiliation had built up a rage that now exploded across the solar system. These were not just battles for survival, but for respect. The aliens began to break. Individual ships fled toward the edge of the system, abandoning their formations and their mission. The great armada that had come to crush humanity was falling. Apart, Vexthal watched his fleet dissolve around him. Ships that had served for centuries were destroyed by primitive human weapons. His own flagship was taking damage from enemies he could not see or fight. "Retreat," he ordered. "Signal all ships to withdraw immediately." "Sir, we cannot locate half our fleet to give the order, then broadcast it on all channels." "We are leaving." Now, the remaining alien ships turned and fled toward the edge of the solar system. Behind them, the darkness of space began to fill with human ships as the stealth systems powered down. The Earthborn fleet had won the greatest victory in human history. Admiral Morrison watched the alien retreat from his command ship. The sky had gone dark with humanity's ships, and in that darkness they had found victory. The species that had been laughed at and dismissed had just defeated the combined might of 6 galactic civilizations. The real war was about to begin. 3 weeks after the Battle of Sol, Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the same great hall on Nexus Prime, where humanity had been humiliated 3 years earlier. But this time, the chamber was silent. The alien delegates who had once laughed at Earth now sat in their seats without making a sound. Jake wore the same blue uniform, but now it carried new medals. Behind him stood the other human commanders who had led the fleet to victory. Captain Helen Brooks, Commander Eric Davis, Captain Susan Miller, and Captain Dave Miller. The warriors who had turned the galaxy's laughter into fear. The hall looked different too. Through the great windows, the shapes of human ships could be seen patrolling the space around Nexus Prime. The TDS Constitution and 50 other vessels had arrived the day before, their dark hulls a reminder of humanity's new power. The Galactic Council had called this emergency session to discuss the human situation. But Jake knew they were really here to surrender. Ambassador Zephyr of the Zephyrian Empire spoke first. His voice no longer sounded like wind through glass. Now it shook with barely controlled fear. Admiral Morrison, he said, we have gathered to discuss the recent ... incidents. In your solar system, the Council wishes to avoid further conflict. Jake looked around the chamber. The same aliens who had mocked human ships were now afraid to meet his eyes. Queen Stakara's mandibles clicked nervously. The crystalline collective had dimmed their light to almost nothing. 3 years ago you laughed at Earth, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. You called our ships toys. You said we were primitives who should stick to farming. You rejected our offer of friendship and told us we had no place. Among the stars, the silence stretched on. No one wanted to be the first to speak. Now you want to discuss peace, Jake continued. Very well. But this time we will discuss it on human terms. Admiral Vexthal of the Hegemony Fleet sat in his chair like a broken statue. His forearms hung limp at his sides. The warrior who had once commanded the most powerful fleet in the galaxy now looked like an old man. Half his ships had been destroyed at Sol, the other half had fled in panic. What do you want? He asked quietly. Dr. Richard Stone stepped forward, carrying a datapad with humanity's demands. The thin scientist with thick glasses now held the power to reshape the galaxy. First, he said, all human colonies will be granted full protection. Under galactic law, any attack on human settlements will be considered an act of war against Earth. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. This was more than they had expected. Second, humanity will establish protectorates over all currently undefended star systems in the frontier regions. These systems will be governed by human law and protected by human ships. That is impossible, protested the representative from the Tau Confederation. Those systems contain valuable resources. Captain Brooks stepped forward. Then you should have defended them. We will. Third, Dr. Stone continued, Earth will have a permanent seat on the Galactic Council with full voting rights. Our voice will be heard in all matters concerning galactic security. The aliens looked at each other with growing alarm. They had expected to negotiate tribute or territorial concessions. Instead, humanity was demanding equal status, and if we refuse? Asked Queen ZZT single quotes Kara. Jake smiled coldly. Then we will continue to solve our problems the same way we solved them at Sol, with dark ships and human determination. The threat was clear. The aliens had seen what happened when they brought their best technology against human tactics. They had no desire to repeat the experience. General Patricia Kane had arrived that morning with news that made the alien position even worse. Human shipyards were working at full capacity, building new vessels based on the lessons learned at Sol. The fleet that had defeated the Galactic Armada was already being replaced by something even more dangerous. The Terran Defense Academy is now open, she announced. We are accepting students from all species who wish to learn modern warfare. The irony was not lost on anyone. The aliens who had once called humans primitive were now being offered the chance to learn from Earth's military expertise. Captain Miller spoke up from behind Jake. Our first class of students arrived yesterday. 12 hegemony officers, 8 Zephyrians, and 5 crystalline collective warriors. They are eager to understand how we defeated their fleets. The transformation was complete. The species that had been laughed at was now teaching warfare to the galaxy's former masters. The formal vote came quickly. The Galactic Council accepted human demands by a margin of 798 to 2. Only 2 small species voted against, and they quickly changed their votes when they saw the final count. Admiral Morrison was officially welcomed as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council. The same chamber that had rejected humanity's application now scrambled to offer them leadership positions, but Jake knew the real power did not lie in council chambers. It lay in the dark ships that now patrolled the space between stars. The Earthborn fleet had grown to over 300 vessels, each one a reminder of what happened when humans were pushed too far. The galaxy was more peaceful now than it had been in centuries. Piracy had almost stopped. Slave trading had ended. The great powers no longer fought each other for territory or resources. They were too busy trying to understand how a species they had dismissed as primitives had become the galaxy's dominant military force. Captain Helen Brooks commanded the new patrol routes that kept the peace. Her ships appeared wherever there was trouble, their dark hulls emerging from the void like vengeful spirits. Pirates surrendered rather than fight. Warlords negotiated rather than attack. The secret was simple, though few aliens understood it. Humanity had not become powerful by building better weapons or faster ships. They had become powerful by refusing to give up, by learning from every defeat, and by turning their weaknesses into strengths on Earth. Children learned about the Battle of Seoul in school. They studied the recordings of Admiral Vexel's fleet, arriving in arrogant glory, and they watched those same ships flee in terror from invisible human vessels. The lesson was clear. Never underestimate the power of determination. The alien species that had once mocked humanity now studied human culture with desperate intensity. They analyzed human history, trying to understand how such a young species had developed such effective military tactics. The answers they found disturbed them. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other. They had perfected the art of warfare through thousands of years of conflict. While other species had achieved peace and focused on technology, humans had learned to fight dirty, fight smart, and never surrender. Admiral Morrison's final log entry from Nexus Prime read, "The galaxy laughed at Earth and called our ships primitive. They said we were weak because we built from dirt and dead plants. Now those same materials form the backbone of the most feared fleet in known space. We are not the strongest species, nor the most advanced. But we are the most stubborn, and in the end that made all the difference." The Great Hall of Nexus Prime was empty now, the alien delegates having returned to their homeworlds with news of humanity's rise. Through the windows, the dark shapes of human ships continued their patrol, silent guardians watching over a galaxy that had learned to respect the species it had once dismissed. The sky had gone dark with humanity's Earthborn ships, and in that darkness a new order had been born. The laughter of mockery had been replaced by the silence of respect, and the galaxy would never be the same. Earth had finally taken its place among the stars, not as a junior partner or client species, but as the guardian of galactic peace. The species that had been told to stick to farming now tended the greatest garden of all, the safety and security of every world under the stars.